Your iPhone has way more cinematic potential than you might think, but you have to set it up right. In this video, I'm showing you the exact steps I use to shoot cinematic footage with nothing but my phone, a few accessories, and a free app. Let's jump in. Here's what I used. Filter mount to attach real camera filters to your phone. A variable ND filter. It's like sunglasses for your lens and it helps keep the motion blur natural even in bright light. External storage because we're recording in Apple Log ProRes 422 and that will eat up your space. And the free Blackmagic Camera app, which gives you full manual control of your camera. So once we're inside the Blackmagic app, I'm gonna go ahead and go through each and every setting to explain to you what you can do about them to really get the most cinematic footage possible. So first of all, under settings, you're gonna go to the record tab, and under codec here, we're gonna choose Apple ProRes 422 LT. You could choose either HQ or 422 regular, but that will take a lot more space for not a lot more quality. So I want to preserve more space than quality in that case, because the quality is almost unnoticeable in that case. So I'm going to keep it at Apple ProRes 422. You cannot change the bitrate, so we're going to keep it as is. Under resolution, we want to choose 4K for the best resolution possible. And under color space, we're going to choose Apple Log HDR. You can think of Apple Log as shooting raw on a camera. You don't just shoot raw on a camera and call it a day. You have to bring it in post-production and have some post-processing to really bring the best out of the image. Apple Log will let you do just that, and that's what you want to choose to really have the best image quality and the most versatility in post-production. Under the camera tab now, we're going to go under the trigger record indicator, and we're going to select beeper. That's just going to notify you when you press record. It's always nice to have a sound cue. And then I don't want to be able to use the volume button to trigger record, because in case I just touch it by accident, I don't want that to affect my footage. We're going to want to lock the white balance on record, because you don't want your white balance to shift as you're recording. We then don't want any internal lens correction. We want to be able to do that in post-production for more versatility, and the rest we're basically going to keep it as is. We don't want to touch anything in audio. It's basically your iPhone microphone that's going to be recording all of your audio, so we're going to keep that as is. Under the monitor here, we want to be able to choose the focus assist as peaking. This color should be red for more visibility. The guide's opacity, I prefer to have it at 50%. The guide's color should be also red for more visibility. The grid's opacity, I like it at 50%, so it's a little bit more visible. You want to display the audio meters, we want to display the histogram, we want to display the storage status. And I also prefer to display the upload status and the battery indicator. Under media here, this is where you're going to choose where your files are going to be saved when you record. So what you're going to do here is uncheck record proxy. Proxies are basically a low quality file of your main file that you're shooting. In that case, I don't need that, because I know that my computer is going to be able to handle the file as is. So I don't need a replicate or a lower quality mirror of my files. I want to save clips to my little hard drive here, so I'm going to go find my hard drive under my browse tab here, and I know that my hard drive is named A022, so I'm going to click on that. I've already created a footage inside my drive that I can use to save the iPhone footage, which is called iPhone. I'm going to click on that and check mark on top. Then under LUTs, the only thing you want to do here is under LUT selection, you want to click on Apple Log to Rec 709, just so you have a reference LUT as you're filming. It's not going to record the LUT onto your footage. It's really just for reference and to have a more pleasant recording experience, so you can look at a more saturated image rather than at a completely unsaturated image that logs give you. So we're going to click on that, and then we're going to click on display LUT. You don't want to record LUT to clip, because that's going to burn basically the LUT onto your clip. You want to be able to do that in post-production for most versatility. And that's about it for the backend settings. Now we're going to jump into the camera settings. Before we actually jump in the camera settings, I just want to go over 3 camera principles that apply to basically all of the cameras in the world, whether it be a $100,000 camera or your iPhone, which is the aperture, the shutter speed, and the ISO. Very quickly, the aperture is basically how wide can your lens open and close inside. It has a little ring that opens and closes when you adjust it, and the wider the ring is going to be open inside of your lens, the more light is going to let come in. So let's say you want to take pictures of a sporting event where things move very quickly, you're going to want to have your shutter speed close very quickly as well. So we're going to adjust it into a higher number so you can really capture that moment and have basically no time between when it opens and closes. And then your ISO is basically your sensors, sensibility to light. So the higher the number, the more sensible your sensor will be. That's very basic. And now, how does it apply to the iPhone? Let's go back into the Blackmagic app. So basically on the top left, you have your lenses choice. You have the very wide 13mm, the 24, the 48, or the 120mm. The 48mm on the iPhone is basically a digital zoom of the 24 lens your iPhone has as default. And the 120 is actually a native lens on the iPhone, a physical lens. Same goes for the 13mm. So this is where you can choose your lenses type. And as you can notice here, as I'm switching lenses, keep an eye on the iris, which was the aperture I was just mentioning. You can see that the number is locked here. And this is because the iPhone lenses do not have control over the aperture. The only control you have here is the shutter speed or the ISO. So it's a fixed aperture lens because those things are very small. So as you can see, if I choose the 13mm, my aperture suddenly goes to 2.2. So the lens in the iPhone has a 2.2 aperture. The 24 has 1.8. Since the 48 is basically a digital zoom in of the 24, it also has 1.8. And then the 120mm has a 2.8 aperture. So the smaller the number, the wider your aperture is open. So then on the right, you have the frames per second. So how many frames per second your iPhone is going to be capturing. You want to leave that at 24, as most movies nowadays are filmed at 24 FPS. So if you want that cinematic look, just do what the big boys are doing, keep it at 24 and don't question it. And then the next thing you can adjust is the shutter speed. A general rule for video is that you want to have your shutter speed double your frame per second. So in that case, we're shooting at 24. I'm simply gonna bring this to 1/48 of a second, and I'm gonna lock it there so it doesn't move, because you want that perfect balance between the FPS and the shutter. So that should stay locked. Then the next thing we can modify here is the ISO. And the general rule of thumb here is to get your ISO as low as possible to really get rid of all of the noise possible. So I'm gonna do that by dragging this down to 54, which is the lowest it can go. On a traditional camera, there's such a thing as the native ISO, which is the optimal ISO setting for a camera to really extract the most dynamic range out of your camera. But in the case of the iPhone, it doesn't have any native ISO, so I'm assuming that the best ISO settings is the lowest, just again to really not get any noise on your footage. And then you have your white balance, which is on auto now. We want to uncheck that and have full control of the white balance and really kind of like eyeball it and just try to match it to what you have in front of you. The reason why we don't want it in auto again is because you don't want any shift in color as you're filming. That's going to make your job a lot harder in post-production. So then if your iPhone doesn't allow full control of the aperture of your lens, this is where you need an ND filter to really control the light that goes in your phone. Without that, you would be stuck at basically 24 FPS and 1/48 of a shutter at a very, very wide aperture of 1.8. That would basically make it impossible to shoot in daylight because you don't have any control of the aperture. So this is why your ND filter will control the entry of the light. So this is why it's really essential to have your ND filter on your phone. So once you understand the principles and how they apply to your iPhone, we're gonna go ahead and click on the top icon here and play around with the settings. The first thing you have here is the zebra settings. So that's gonna notify you when something is overexposed. I like to keep mine at 80% because I feel like this is the most accurate I can get it to work. And basically every time something is gonna be overexposed in your image, meaning a loss of information, is gonna basically showcase a pattern here, a zebra-like pattern where things are overexposed. So you can really use that to properly expose your image. So one of the things you want to do here is go under your frame guides here and activate the rule of third guide. This is just going to allow you to play with better composition. And then the next thing I want to do here is activate my level, so I know how my horizon is straight when I'm filming. And I'm also going to activate the little dot in the center just so I can find my center frame more easier. So those were the settings you basically need to really have cinematic footage out of your iPhone. And now once you have all of those settings dialed up, you can press record your footage, and then we're gonna bring it in post-production. I'm gonna show you what I do to have the most cinematic footage possible in post-production. All right, guys, so we're now inside, and I'm about to jump in Premiere Pro to show you how I bring the iPhone footage to life by color grading the proper way. So the first thing you want to do here inside of Premiere is create an adjustment layer that you're going to position on top of your footage here. On the adjustment layer, you're going to input the Apple log to Rec 709 conversion LUT. You can find the LUT on Apple's website. I'm going to have it linked in the description. You're going to select input LUT here, and you're going to go find the Rec 709 conversion LUT. You can click on open, and as you can see here, your footage is now going to be converted from the log space to the Rec 709, but there's still a lot of adjustments we can do to make it look more cinematic. I'm just going to select a frame I'm willing to work with here. So I'm going to go with this one, select full quality, and I'm going to start slowly but surely grading and bringing that image to life. First thing I'm noticing here is that the shadows are very, very dark. So one thing I want to do is bring up my exposure just a little bit to bring the overall exposure of my image to where I want it to be. And you're going to notice that as I'm adjusting, the image is kind of shifting between tones. I feel like this is a lag with Apple Log and Premiere Pro, so I'm not sure why it does that. But once you export it though, it's going to be exported as it is when the footage is not playing. So you can make your adjustments here. I like my exposure to be right there. Next thing I want to do is go under the curves, RGB curves, and I'm going to create some saturation and some contrast with the curves here. So everything that's on the left of your curve will affect your shadows, and everything that's on the right will affect the highlights. So I'm just going to bring this down a little bit and bring this up a little bit. That's the famous S curve. As you can see, there's kind of an S shape here. So what you're doing essentially is bringing down your shadows and bringing up your highlights, and it creates a little bit more contrast. And I'm going to affect my mids here by dragging the curve in the center just slightly. Next thing I want to do is start playing with the colors. So I'm going to do the same thing here with the blue curve, which is going to affect all of the blue tones on my highlights and in my shadows. Starting with the highlights on the top, I'm going to drag this down to actually add some more kind of like yellow to my image. And I'm going to add some more blue here to my highlights. So I'm just going to toggle this on and off so you can see what I just did. With a few simple changes, we're now getting to a more cinematic image. The next thing I want to do is, again, under curves, I'm just going to close this one and open the hue and saturation curves. And I'm going to go play with the hue here of the colors. So I want to affect everything that's green. So I'm going to be selecting everything that's between those two dots here. So the color that's in between here will be affected by the changes, as you can see. So I'm affecting really the greens of the colors here. So I'm going to bring this down slightly to have the foliage a little bit more green. And I can see here, I can either have everything green, but I feel like this is a little bit too boring. So I want to add a little more orange to the yellow in my image. And I'm going to bring this down. So I'm just going to toggle this on and off so you can see what I just did. Simple adjustments, but you can really see how it affects the colors of the foliage here. Off, on. Very, very subtle. And then the next thing I want to do is under the creative tab, I'm going to add some saturation and add some vibrance. About 10 on each settings. So toggle on and off, on. Great. I'm going to play around with my highlights, bring it up slightly, bring my white slightly up too. I'm going to bring this down by 0.1. So, 0.7. So all of the changes we did are starting to add up here. And then the next thing I want to do is go play with the color wheels and match to really give it the look we're looking for. I'm going to start with the midtones. And as I'm turning this, you're going to see everything that sits in the midtones is going to be affected. So I'm going to add some more blue to create a nice contrast with yellow here. So I'm going to bring my highlights up to yellow. I don't want to be overdoing it. I still want this to feel natural, but I still also want to have a style on my image. So I'm just trying to find the sweet spot. I'm resetting constantly. Cool. All right, that looks good to me. I'm gonna go add a little bit of vignette here. And I think I'm satisfied with this. So with just a few tweaks, we're now at an image that looks a lot more cinematic than we had when we first started. All right, so just to show you what we did here, on the right here is the simple log to Rec 709 conversion LUT. So it brings your image from its raw format or log format to the Rec 709 color space. And then from the Rec 709 color space, we played around with the footage to bring us to that type of image. So from log to Rec 709 to a cinematic graded image with a few simple steps. So this is really what you can do to achieve cinematic results with your iPhone. You can simply repeat the steps I just showed you and really tweak it to your scene depending on what lighting conditions you're in or what color palette you're working on. But basically, this is how I achieve a cinematic look with the iPhone. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe. It helps a lot, and I'll see you in the next one.